we can get started.
All right, good morning, everybody, and members to the MAG Transportation Safety Committee. This is Shane, your chair, so I'll look to try to call this meeting to order. And just a reminder that this meeting is 100% virtual, so that means please mind your microphones. So if you are talking, please make sure you unmute yourself, and then if you're not talking, please mute yourself so we do not get that feedback that gets to be disturbing to the meeting. Also, if you are on the phone, please remember press and use *6 to unmute yourself on the phone. And then also, being that we are virtual and not necessarily see people's faces, please identify yourself when you're talking so we can make sure we recognize you, and then also make sure we get you recorded in the minutes. So we'll go ahead and try to call the meeting to order and take a roll call just to make sure we have everybody to proceed. So I'll ask Ms. Herrera if she could go ahead and facilitate the roll call.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. Members of the Transportation Safety Committee, please unmute yourself when I call your name and indicate your attendance. Carrie Wilcoxon.
Here.
Thank you. Shane Kiso is here.
I'm present.
Ward Stanford. John Willett. Raymond Hung.
Good morning, I'm here.
Thank you, Raymond.
Margaret, this is Ward Stanford.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Ward.
Yeah.
Nick Russo.
Here. Good morning, Margaret.
Good morning. Ron Gritman.
Here for Florence, yes.
Great. Aaron Pinkerton. Tony Abbo.
I'm here.
Thank you. Matthew Reed.
Here.
Thank you. Woody Scouten. Carrie Osborne.
Here.
Thank you. Maza Muradovich.
Present.
Thank you. Maria Deep for Ryan Hudson Mesa.
Maria Deep, City of Mesa, present.
Thank you, Maria. Chris Limka for Brandon Forey, Peoria.
Here.
Thank you, Chris. Carl Langford.
Here.
Tara Harmon.
Present.
Thank you. Jan Martin.
Here.
Thank you. Kiran Gutapalli.
I'm here, thank you.
Thank you. Dana Oziani. Dana Oziani. Kathy Hollow.
Yes, I'm here. Good morning, Margaret.
Good morning, Kathy. Frank Sotil for Adrian Ruiz, Valley Metro.
Hi, good morning, Margaret, I'm here.
Good morning. Jeff King, FHWA.
Good morning, Margaret. I am here. Thank you.
Good morning. Robert Gray. Captain David Cates. Alberto Gutierrez. Have I missed anyone? All right, Mr. Chair, with that, we have met quorum.
All right, thank you, Margaret. Thank you, everybody. We'll go on to the second item, and that is the approval of the minutes from January 25th. Does any member of the Transportation Safety Committee have any comments or revisions to the 25th meeting minutes? And I'm assuming everybody has a chance to look through them. All right, I'm not hearing any. So do I have a motion to recommend approval of the meetings of January 25th, 2022?
This is Carrie Wilcoxon. I move to accept the minutes from January 25th.
I second.
All right,
It's
was that
Tony
Tony?
Abbo.
Tony, okay. So I have a primary carry and a second by Tony. All right, we'll go ahead and call for a vote. So those in favor, when your name is called, if you're in favor, please say aye. If those opposed, please say no. And if you abstain, go ahead and say abstain. And Margaret, can you go ahead and take the roll call for the vote?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the Transportation Safety Committee, please unmute and indicate how you vote. Carrie Wilcoxon,
yes.
Shane Kiso,
Aye.
Ward Stanford, Ward Stanford,
Yes, Margaret, I'm sorry, I was interrupted and not attentive.
okay, thank you. John Willett, Raymond Hong,
Aye.
Nick Russo, did I hear Nick Russo?
Aye, yes, Margaret.
Thank you. Ron Gritman,
Aye.
Aaron Pinkerton,
Aye.
Tony Abbo,
Aye.
Matthew Reed,
Aye.
Woody Scouten, Carrie Osborne,
Aye.
Mazen Maravich,
Aye.
Maria Deeb,
Aye.
Chris Lemke,
Aye.
Carl Langford,
Aye.
Tara Harmon,
Aye.
thank you. Jan Martin,
Aye.
Kiran Guntupalli,
Aye.
Dana Oziani, Kathy Hollow,
Aye.
Frank Sotil,
Aye.
Jeff King,
Non-voting, but if I could, I would.
okay. Robert Gray,
Margaret, I'm in finally. I was having problems.
okay, thank you, Dana. I've got you down in quorum as well
For
as,
I, I'm here.
okay, aye for the minutes. Thank you very much. Robert Gray, Captain David Cates, and Alberto Gutier. Have I missed anyone? With that, Mr. Chair, the motion passes on the minutes.
All right, thank you, Margaret. We're skipping right along. Third item on the agenda, call to the audience. Members of the public were asked to submit written comments related to this meeting through the MAG website. Comments may be sent at any time leading up to the meeting, but must be received at least 1 hour prior to the posted start time for the meeting. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on items that will fall under the MAG jurisdiction that are not on the agenda or that are on the agenda for discussion and not for action. And Margaret, have we received any public comments? And if so, please read them.
Mr. Chair, we received no comments for this or any other item on the agenda.
All right, move on to item 4, which is the program manager's report. The MAG Transportation Safety Program Manager will provide a report to the Transportation Safety Committee on activities of general interest. And I'll start off passing along to Margaret.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Transportation Safety Committee. I have a few items today. This is an item that we have been bringing to your attention really over the past couple of years, but more concentratedly over the past few months. And I wanted to first thank both Glendale and the City of Phoenix for answering this call to action and committing staff to be trainers, adding to the larger multi-agency planning team for these workshops. This is really a crucial element of the planning and hosting of these training workshops is having this group and specifically the trainers. There's still time that we have before we start planning this year's workshops. And we still need some additional local agency partners for volunteers. I just wanted to quote quickly from the flyer, the fact sheet that was distributed back in January. Having a broader range of agencies participating helps spread the workload more evenly across the region, creates important community connections with local school districts, and promotes a greater sharing of knowledge and experiences. So as I mentioned, if you could please contact me at mherrera@azmag.gov or srts@azmag.gov. We hope to start planning for this year's training. So, excuse me. So hopefully by the end of March, we can get that going. Fiscal year 2022 project updates. The fiscal year 2022 road safety assessment locations have been identified by the multi-agency working group. And that group included also the requesting agencies. This year's program will include 11 locations in Avondale, Glendale, and Phoenix, and will be assigned in 5 task orders to the MAG on-call consultants for a total estimated budget of about $200,000. Task order development is currently underway, and we anticipate the work to begin in April and completed before the fiscal year deadline of June 30th, 2022. For the fiscal year 2022 Safe Routes to School projects, those are underway at 4 schools in Apache Junction, 1 school in Gila Bend, and 1 school in the Salt River Maricopa Indian community. The remaining Safe Routes to School studies at 2 schools in Phoenix are in coordination for task order execution and project kickoff. We anticipate working through mid-May on developing these studies with a break during the school summer break. And then we're going to pick them back up in September so we can get them completed in December of 2022. We also started planning for the fiscal year 2023 Safe Routes to School studies. And we'll be seeking scope concurrence with Buckeye, Fountain Hills, Peoria, and Surprise starting in May. The fiscal year 2022 CME AZ program, as many of you may remember, we have a media consultant that is under contract. We have extended that contract through June 2023. We held a kickoff with that team last week, and we are anticipating a task force meeting here in the next few weeks. The task force will disseminate the MAG final report and the consultant end of year report as well, highlighting some of the recommendations and opportunities for improvements. Some examples include enhanced enforcement data collection, new radio ad format, and a new human-centered digital ads, and additional and more specific surveys. For the pedestrian and bicyclist safety analysis pilots, those were the pilots that we were incorporating near miss analysis. Those have been completed at the 10 initial locations. The remaining 10 locations will start upon execution of the new emerging technology on-call contracts, possibly or hopefully to begin in October of this year. And finally, the predictive safety phase 1 project is complete, and the final report is available on the MAG Transportation Safety Program's webpage under materials. For the phase 2, we have begun information gathering that's taking place based on discussions with peer organizations, universities, ADA, et cetera, for scope development. The next item is just kind of a reminder of our programming schedule for the Safe Routes to School projects. Moving forward from now, you'll see that April 11th is the due date for those applications. on April 15th is when evaluation begins. So the applications will be uploaded onto the MAG webpage. We'll be sending out a notification to committee members to begin their evaluations. Evaluations on those projects are due on May 2nd, ahead of the May 24th Transportation Safety Committee meeting, where we will hear presentations and have a potential action item for recommendation of the list of projects. Also, as a reminder, we have a little over $240,000 remaining for programming in fiscal year 2025, based on the amount of a little over $150,000 that was programmed in January. So we have, for the past 2 years, been seeing each other through these Zoom meetings. We had some challenging times when we were in the throes of developing the strategic transportation safety plan. So we are looking forward to meeting again in person. In fact, the policy committees have already started meeting here in March with a hybrid virtual option. And so most, if not all, technical committees and other technical and other committees will follow in April with that hybrid virtual option. So one of the things that we want to consider, actually, this was a recommendation or a suggestion of our chair, is that we could designate 2 to 3 meetings a year to be all in person. And the thought there is, in light of the challenges that we had when we were developing the strategic transportation safety plan, so when we have agenda items that we need a lot of input from you as committee members, we would like to hold those in person. So the plan, the larger plan and program development agenda items, as well as our funding program evaluations and recommendations. So for instance, you all remember the evaluations for the RSP and the Safe Routes to School projects last November. That type of meeting, we're suggesting that be all in person as well. And the last item on my report today is just a reminder and to point out a project that we highlighted last meeting. This project will develop a resource for local agencies of all sizes to identify safety implementation elements that can be included as either standalone projects or with any other project, regardless of funding source. So we are in the phase right now, you can see in bold letters here, we are holding a series of member agency input sessions. In fact, the first 2 are this afternoon, so I'm looking forward to those. And we really, input from our member agencies is going to be key because they will be the ultimate user of this toolkit. So we want to be able to use your input to complete the scope of work that will be included in the RFP. And with that, Mr. Chair, that completes my report.
All right, thank you, Margaret, for pushing through that. And yeah, we'll move on to the next item. But if you do have any questions for Margaret, please feel free to contact her, email her if you have any questions or clarifications with those projects. As you can see, Meg has a lot of projects that they do throughout the year. And again, kudos to them and Margaret for managing all those and doing that work behind the scenes with those projects. So we'll move on to item number, let's see, is it number 5? All right. It's the fiscal year 22 local agency safety studies, specifically City of Scottsdale, McDowell Road, Hayden Road to Scottsdale Road. This item is on the agenda for information and discussion. A project was included in the fiscal year 2022 MAG work program to provide technical assistance to local agencies in conducting road safety studies. Project applications are available on the MAG website for requests annually in July for the current fiscal year program. One application, fiscal year 22, was submitted by the City of Scottsdale on March 4th, 2022. MEG's staff will provide a background on the local agency safety studies, the last program. And also, I believe a representative from City of Scottsdale will provide a brief presentation on the Scottsdale's request for technical assistance. So I'll pass that to Margaret to start us off.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Transportation Safety Committee. The Local Agency Safety Studies Program was initiated back in 2017. And this was based on various requests that we would get for technical assistance that really kind of fell outside of the traditional road safety assessment program. So we carved out, you may remember that we used to have an estimated budget of $300,000 for the road safety assessment program. So what we did was we carved out $100,000 of that to go towards these local agency safety studies. So we release a call for project applications for consideration every July 1st, which is the beginning of the fiscal year. And then the requests, we close that request in the first Monday of March every year. And that's not random. We want to do that because if there are projects that need to be completed by the end of the fiscal year, June 30th, that first Monday in March is really the last time that we can get an application requesting these funds so that we can move forward. So with that, we did receive one application this year from the City of Scottsdale, and I will open it up to Mr. Karan Gudapalli from the City of Scottsdale to provide you all a brief presentation.
Good morning, everyone. This is Kiran Guntupalli again with the City of Scottsdale. Typically, every fiscal year, City of Scottsdale conducts RSAs. We do RSAs on our own on 5 intersections and 5 segments. These segments are identified based on a report that City of Scottsdale generates once every 2 years, which basically looks at the traffic volumes on all major roads and also crash rates on both segments and intersections. So based on the top intersections and segments that were identified in this report, we typically do RSAs. Because of the staffing situation with the City of Scottsdale, we could not complete RSAs per our program. So that's the reason on why we submitted a request for doing an RSA along this corridor. The intersections of Scottsdale and McDowell, Miller Road and McDowell Road, and also Scottsdale and McDowell Road were among the top few of the top intersections that needed our attention. And also the segment along this corridor was also identified in the top segments. I don't want to repeat the numbers and drive you crazy with those numbers, but these were among the top locations that were identified in the report. And also, there's a lot of redevelopment along this corridor. It used to be previously an auto mall corridor, and because everything got relocated along Loop 101, there's a major redevelopment that's happening along this corridor with medium density apartments built along the corridor. And we recently added bicycle lanes to accommodate the residential development. We added bike lanes along the corridor. So we want to study the impact of this new traffic pattern, bicycle facilities, and how it's impacting roadway safety, and also to see if there are any improvements that we could do along the corridor to make it much safer, and hence this request. With that, I'm open to take any questions.
Hey, Kieran, Shane here.
Hello, Shane.
You said bike lanes, so they're not divided bike lanes or protected bike lanes.
What we did was there was a wide median along the corridor, so we trimmed the median to add some space on the roadway to add bike lanes on McDowell Road. No, they're not separated or buffered bike lanes. They're just a stripe, a 8-inch stripe separating the travel lane from the bike lane.
All right. And the speed along there, Kieran, is it 45 or 35?
It varies. It changes from 40 to 45. I believe this segment is I believe at 45.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kiran, this is Mazen.
Hello, Mazen.
Hi, good morning. Kiran, just a question about the crash rates that's developed on this slide. Were these related? So you have them divided into two different SCRs, one segments and one intersection. So are they basically related to a particular type of crashes, Kiran?
These are all crashes. That's 2.29 crashes for million vehicle miles traveled. And same thing for, so it's all crashes on that segment to a VMT.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. If I don't have any questions, is it an action item, Margaret?
No.
Okay.
This is for information and discussion.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you all.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Kieran.
Kieran.
All right, as we heard, that was just information discussion. We'll move on to item 6. All right, this is for fiscal year 25-26 Highway Safety Improvement Program call for project applications. This item is on the agenda for information and discussion. Earlier this month, ADOT issued a call for Highway Safety Improvement Program, or known as HSIP, project applications. This call for projects will provide HSIP funds for eligible road safety improvement projects in fiscal year 25 and 26. Approximate amount available for the statewide competition is $24 million in fiscal year 25 and $35 million in fiscal year 26. ADOT staff will provide a brief presentation on the HSIP call for projects, timeline for submittal, and the 2022 ADOT HSIP guidance. MEG staff will initiate a discussion on potential road safety projects that could be a candidate regional HSIP application to be submitted to ADOT in response to the upcoming call for projects. So maybe pass this to Margaret. Not sure if Meg talks first and then ADOT.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Transportation Safety Committee. I'm actually going to hand it over to Mona Aglanswick from ADOT to provide the presentation. I think she's going to be joined as well by Larry Talley.
Margaret, Larry Talley, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. I think Mona was in another meeting this morning and she won't be able to do her part. So I'll take the whole thing. So if you want to move on to the next slide, we'll just the purpose of this briefing is to update the MAG Transportation Safety Committee on the status. There's been a couple of changes since we did our initial presentation. Next slide, please. Okay, as the chairman said, there is approximately $24 million available for FY25, 35 available for 26. The difference there is some of the programming with the 23 projects had to be moved out to 25 for multiple reasons that are specific to individual projects. So we, instead of losing the design funds that had already been spent on some of the projects, we went ahead and moved them out to 25. That's why there is only 24 million in 25. We're still pending our funding guidance for the new appropriations bill that will increase that 24 and that 35 mil. We don't have, as I say, we don't have our guidance yet, so we don't know what the total amount will be. The other issue that we have is, and I'll touch on it later on in the presentation, is that there is now a non-infrastructure portion of the HSIP program, and we will do another call for projects once we finalize the guidance and how we're going to manage those types of projects. And you'll see what those non-infrastructure type projects are a few slides down. And again, we will base our project listing will be based on the benefit to cost ratios. Next slide. Okay, let's touch just a bit on lessons learned from the 23-24 call for projects, or 22-23 or 23-24 call for projects. In almost every case, our anticipated costs were underestimated. As a result, that resulted in either the local agencies having to provide additional funds to fund the entire project as scoped, or the scope of the projects had to be reduced to bring the costs down to the HSIP eligible funding. The inflation rates were determined to be low in our 23-24 applications. So based on our the understanding that we had when our project management group goes in yearly and evaluates the state projects, they use a inflation rate of 4.5 for the last evaluation. So since our design phase of the 25-26 call for projects is 3 years out, we put a 13.5% inflation factor, and for the design phase, and in the construction phase, we put an 18% inflation factor. That is not a locked-in number. Those applications, those cost estimates belong to the local agency. If you feel that the numbers that we put in there are too high or too low, you're more than welcome to adjust them to what you feel would be appropriate for the 25-26 program. In many cases, we found that the substructures of the projects were inadequate to accept the countermeasures. Specifically, it applied to centerline and shoulder rumble strips. What happened there again, and we ended up reducing the scope of the project to those sections of the roadway that could accept the rumble strips, which unfortunately, we didn't get the safety benefits that we wanted because we didn't get the roadway segments. So a couple of the projects were deferred to 25 to give the agencies time to improve the roadway wearing surfaces so they could accept the rumble strips. Again, we strongly encourage the agencies to make sure that they take a look at the substructures to make sure that they are going to be able to accept the countermeasures that are being installed. We also sense that agencies, if they had a mid-block pedestrian fatal or suspected serious injury crash, they automatically went to a pedestrian hybrid beacon. We didn't see a lot, or matter of fact, I don't think we saw any intermediate solutions to the PHB. So what we have done is we have added one more step to the application if you're going to submit for pedestrian hybrid beacons. And again, I'll touch on that in a slide or so. And we also, again, JPAs took longer than was anticipated, and the agencies that waited until after the first of the fiscal year that the design phase was in to start working on their JPAs with ADOT were unable, it didn't leave enough time in the state fiscal year to execute a couple of the JPAs and to get consultants on board to start the design. So those projects had to be delayed also. So what we have done is in the new revision or revision to the Appendix A is that you have to have your project initiation packet submitted early enough to get your JPA finalized prior to 1 July of the fiscal year that you're going to do design. Next slide, please. Okay, changes to the program. I've already touched on some of these, and I'm not going to go through all of these. The big change is that the draft applications must be submitted for review, and I'll show you the new dates that the applications will have to be submitted here in another slide. But the reason we're asking for the draft application is primarily to review the scope of the work and the cost estimate. We're going to send the cost estimates out to the LPA section and the PMG project management group to take a look at to see if there's any glaring errors in either the scope or the cost. And what we will do then, we as the traffic safety section will collect the comments from the other ADOT groups and submit those back to the local agencies. So in time for them to be able to review the comments and make a decision as to whether they want to incorporate our comments into their applications or if they want to resubmit and resubmit the final as the draft was submitted without any changes. We dropped the minimum for non-infrastructure projects was reduced from 250,000 to 100,000. Those are for the RSAs, the strategic transportation plans for the local agencies, and I think I said RSA program. The step is the extra documentation that we've required for PHBs, and I'll touch base on that in just a minute. The project initiation timeline added, that was what I talked about to get the JPAs in place before the fiscal year of the design is to start. And so we added some expanded guidance on the requirements for the state's progress toward achieving state safety performance targets, because if we don't make significant progress toward our targets, or if we don't meet our targets, the feds add some requirements for us to have to meet targets to spend funds in a fiscal year. So we just expanded on that in our guidance. And then the new transportation bill added one special rule to the HSIP program, which is a vulnerable road user, which requires that if our vulnerable road users fatalities and serious injuries exceed 15% of our total for the year, then we have to spend additional funds on pedestrians, bicyclists, and non-motorized vehicle users. And finally, Appendix D, the non-infrastructure projects. We're still working on this, and as soon as we get it completed, we'll add that, or we'll get that out to all the agencies. The next slide, please. This is AZ Safe Transportation for Every Pedestrian. And what we do is require a field review form to be submitted with the application if you're going to submit for a HAWK. What it primarily does, it has you take a look at the roadway widths, your AADT, whether it's a divided highway or a divided roadway, speed limit, and then it recommends the most appropriate countermeasure for that type of roadway, and it just adds a process to go through to get people to think about less expensive countermeasures than adding a new HAWK signal. Next page, or next slide. Okay, I stole this one from Jeff King. Basically what the new transportation bill, the HSIP eligibility guidance basically stayed the same with some definition tweaks, but it did add automated enforcement programs. Obviously, we can't use that on the state roadway system, but on your local roadway system. And we don't have guidance just yet on how that is going. If you're going to apply for automated enforcement, then we've still got to work out how that is actually, the funds are going to be distributed and how we're going to manage that. It also allows for TAP projects to use HSIP funds to pay for the federal, for the non-federal share of that, the 5.7%. And then it added the specified safety projects, which are the non-infrastructure projects, which, if I can have the next slide, I believe is, yes, here are our non-infrastructure type. So it promotes public awareness. Again, it goes to the enforcement of traffic safety laws, infrastructure, non-infrastructure equipment to support emergency services, conduct safety-related research to evaluate experimental safety countermeasures or equipment, or support safe routes to school, non-infrastructure related activities. Now, there is a separate section in 23 USC for non-infrastructure, which does not come out of the HSIP program, which is a separately funded source. But it does allow for HSIP funds if agencies want to submit for it. As I said, we're still working on how these are going to be rolled out, how we're going to do the call, what the application is going to look like, and how the funds will be distributed. Next slide, please. Okay, here are the new milestones. As you can see, February 28th, we did our official notification. And then on the 9th, we did our statewide webinar workshop. On May 31st, the draft applications are due to the state so that we can have them out and taken a look at by the LPA section, PMG, and ourselves to make sure that they're good and the cost estimates are within what we feel is a good cost for the July 18th. This is a MAG milestone, the list of projects and pre-final applications due to MAG. July 24th, Transportation Safety Committee presentations. August 1st is when the final applications are due to ADOT. October, we'll have the HSIP Safety Committee approval. That's when we will provide the final list that has been approved above the line and below the line projects. We will then get the eligibility letters out to the local agencies by the end of the year. And then in January, the project list will be submitted to the ADOT tentative 5-year program. Next slide. Okay, just a reminder that all HSIP projects have to be consistent with the Strategic Transportation Safety Plan. The 2019 STSP reduced the number of emphasis areas from 14 to 5, and those 5 emphasis areas are driver behavior, which primarily deals with speeding, intersections, pedestrians, lane departure, and safety-related data. So your project has to fit under one of those 5 emphasis areas. Next slide, please. Okay, Incorporation Changes, we're going to add Appendix D once we finalize it, and then we'll issue a separate call for projects, which will probably, when we get our final guidance and we get our program worked out on how we're going to call for and administer the non-infrastructure projects, we'll either do another call for projects for 23, or if we can't get it out in time, we'll do it for state fiscal year 24. Next slide, please. Okay, Resources, this is the web link for our HSIP documents. So you can go on there, get the application, get the HSIP manual, all the appendices, and a few other documents that we have on there, some funding source documents, or we have a manual that we have listed, or we have put together that has costs for design and construction of the types of projects we normally see, such as the hawks, the rumble strips, turning lanes, traffic signals, and you can get a feel for what those projects cost in the past. Next slide, please.
Larry, if I could just interject really quick here.
Sure.
So this URL that's on the screen, you should be able to access this if you go to the Safety Committee event page. This entire presentation is in PDF form, so you should be able to click on the link within this, this slide in the PDF, and it should take you straight to that webpage. So you don't have to try to write down the URL.
Hey, Margaret, sorry.
Okay.
This is Nazim. Sorry, Margaret, can you please send us the link on the chat page, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
That's a good idea, Mazen. I'll get it up here in a second. Actually, Mohammed, could you cut and paste the link to today's Safety Committee event page into the chat for me, please?
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Margaret.
Okay, that concludes my presentation. If anybody has any questions.
Hey, Larry, this is Mazen again, and I could go to the link and check it. Those 5 areas that were actually included, driver behavior, intersection, and pets. What are the other 2 that where the HSIP has to be included under? Yeah, here we go. So you got driver behavior, pet, intersection, safety-related data, lane departure. Thank you.
Okay, if no other questions, Margaret, I turn it back over to you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity for us to catch everybody up on where we stand on the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
Hi, Margaret. Hi, Mr. Chair. This is Carrie. If you could, I had a couple of comments to make as a follow-up on this.
Yeah, go ahead, Carrie.
First of all, Larry pointed this out, but we have had some really unfortunate projects that were either canceled or cut back because of cost estimation problems. And I just want to make sure that to put more emphasis on the fact that we really need those cost estimates to be as good as you're able to make them. Reach out to ADOT. We can't guarantee anything, but at least we can usually tell you what it cost us to build similar projects. You know, we're not trying to be difficult when we come back to people and say that their projects are over budget. We want to make sure that every good safety project gets approved and gets built. We're doing everything we can to make sure that happens as seamlessly as possible. But we have had a lot of, or a number of instances where projects were not built to the level that was originally envisioned, and they were not built in as timely a manner as needed. So we're really trying to fix that. And we just need to make sure that everyone who is applying works very closely with ADOT and their consultants, if they're being done by consultants, to make sure that the costs are accurate as possible. So that's my only cautionary point that I wanted to make sure that we drove home. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Larry. And just a reminder, this item was for information and discussion only. So I think we're ready to move on to.
Mr. Chairman, I had my hand up on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, I just wanted to thank, first of all, I wanted to thank Larry for a good detailed presentation. And I just wanted to just make, one comment or one follow-up to Carrie. As you well know, some of the projects, that some of the agencies put in back in 2019, or even I think it was 2019, 2020, around that time frame. When we're going on to the 2023, 2024 projects, nobody anticipated the inflation that's going on at this point right now. So, I mean, the agencies are trying to do as best we can to, anticipate costs. But like I said, if you've even looked at the past, past couple of months, last 4 or 5 months, you've noticed, or we've all noticed that, huge price increases on almost everything. So, we just need some flexibility to allow us to, build some of these projects rather than cutting them back. So that's kind of my comment. I just wanted to, just make that, make that known that, there are some, inflation costs, beyond normal. I mean, if nobody would have guessed back in 2019, that we would have in some places 10 to 15%, cost increases at this stage. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. This is Carrie, and inflation is a big and very real issue. A lot of our projects, or all of our projects, are being affected by it. But I don't want to make it sound like inflation is the only thing that is causing a problem. All projects are coming in under budget, and we have obviously a perverse incentive with a statewide competition. You want to make sure your costs are lower or as low as possible, and the benefits are as high as possible, so that you have a competitive benefit cost ratio. The one area that affects, of course, every project. One of the areas that we are trying to work through with our own management is the other concept where an ADOT project, if it is over budget, can get additional funds. City projects, if they're over budget, it's on the city. We don't like how that works, and it's with the level of projects that we have, it puts cities at a disadvantage. We are trying to fix that, but I also don't want to. I mean, inflation is real, and it's happening, and it's happening more than anyone expected. But we also are seeing projects that are just poorly scoped initially. And I want to make sure that we, at the very least, do the best we can scoping projects when we apply for them, and that cuts across everyone's projects, including ADOT projects. So thank you.
Thank you, Carrie.
All right, thank you. I don't think I see any other hands out there. Margaret, if you see anything on your end. I think we're ready to move on.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I actually, because I'm running the presentation, I cannot see raised hands.
Okay.
Potentially, maybe if Chris or Mohammed could monitor raised hands, that would be great.
Yeah, I see a hand with Tony yet, and it's raised on top of my name list that I see, but I'm not sure if that's standard with Zoom, if the hands go to the top of the list. I'm assuming so. So we'll as we move forward, we'll try to keep an eye on that too, and I'll try to do that as well.
Thank
All
you.
right, we'll move on to, looks like item 7, I believe we are at. All right, this is the MAG Roadway Safety Program, known as RSP, about evaluation criteria. This item is on the agenda for information and discussion. The Roadway Safety Program, RSP was initiated in September 2019 by MEG to supplement the state's Highway Safety Improvement Program, HISIP program. The RSP assists with providing additional funding and short-term for low-cost, immediate needs safety projects. The previous cycles for programming RSP funds in 2019-21 provided an opportunity for MEG to obtain feedback on current processes. MEG will provide a review of the recommendations for enhancements to the evaluation criteria. We encourage members of the committee to provide input on the evaluation criteria to be included in future discussions for the fiscal year 24 programming cycle in 2022. So I'll pass that, I guess, to Margaret and go from there.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Transportation Safety Committee. I apologize again and for future lapses in my voice. I don't know what's going on. I haven't been to a concert or to a Seahawks game in a while, so I have no idea what's going on with my voice. So we'll make it through as best we can here. I wanted to update you on the process, which really actually started the day we finished our evaluations last November. So we've been reaching out, and some of you have emailed me or called me regarding that process that we use for the evaluations. So we wanted to gather as much feedback as we could. We then took a look at the evaluation questions themselves and did an analysis that I will review with you here in a few seconds. We're also going to be developing a prioritization tool. This will streamline the prioritization process, including the evaluation. This is a process that's been used at pretty much all other programming that's done at MAG. And so we are aligning ourselves to be consistent with those other programs at MAG with developing this prioritization tool. So the main thing that we heard was that we need to enhance the evaluation to provide more clarity and eventually more value to those evaluation questions. We are going to be going to the working group. There's an Rsp working group that was established back when we initiated the Rsp program, and we will be continuing our discussions with that working group here in April and May. And then any recommendations that come from that working group, including some of the things that we discussed today, will come back to the safety committee in May, and then TRC as well in May, and then to the policy committees for approval of that process for the upcoming call for projects. So as I mentioned earlier, the feedback that we received was that evaluators, members of the committee, would like to see an increased value of the evaluation score. And the graphic or the chart that I show here on the right-hand side of the screen is by no means accurate in percentage-wise. It just is meant to illustrate that the benefit cost ratio was kind of the behemoth in the room when it came to the overall score for each one of the projects. We also heard that we should really review those questions and find which ones that should really be quantitative, that we remove totally from the evaluator's assessment. We also want to provide a rubric or a point scale that can be easily used by the evaluators to make their assessment for each one of those the qualitative questions. And then also we provide some application input examples, evidence-based, so that both the applicant really as well as the evaluator have a better idea of what we're looking for as it relates to meeting the goals and priorities of the RSP program rather. So I don't necessarily expect you to be able to read all the writing on here, but I wanted to kind of describe the analysis that was done on the evaluation questions. So the point distribution chart below or here on the screen was used to analyze the responses to the qualitative questions. So on the right-hand vertical axis are really the 12 evaluators. So we had 12 evaluators. So this chart represents how often the evaluators gave a consistent score for each question. So with 12 evaluators, a 12 on this chart represents a perfect alignment. So in other words, all 12 evaluators gave the same score. The horizontal axis that you can't see necessarily are each of the 20 questions. So it's how in alignment those evaluations were for each one of the projects, and the lines themselves represent each of the projects that were submitted. So this is a really great graphic that our performance measurement team came up with or developed, and you can really see some of the questions that or really highlight some of the questions that we might want to scrutinize a little bit more and give a little bit more clarity. And we don't expect perfect alignment, but in our view, the graph highlights some of the questions that may need refinement and clarification, as I mentioned. So for example, we found that the equity questions, which are these here in this portion of the graph, as well as two of the equity value questions, which are here, and then some of the road safety program evaluation scope of work questions, which are in this area here, had a wider than ideal range of responses. So this really helped us focus in on some of those questions that need to be addressed moving forward. So with that, we talked about the performance measurement or the prioritization tool that streamlines the evaluation. We have a draft of that, but we'll be moving forward with a fuller developed version of that, and you'll probably have a little bit more detailed presentation on that from our performance measurement team at the May meeting. So also to enhance the evaluation of the Rsp applications, we're going to be focusing at this time on the qualitative elements. And to that end, we're recommending removal of 5 questions, designating 8 questions as quantitative, and combining, or even in some cases, we've reworded some of the qualitative questions. So this makes a remaining of 5 qualitative questions to go into the evaluation. This actually works out really nicely when you're applying a 0 to 4 scoring schema for a total possible 20 points. This is as evaluators will consider this when reviewing the project applications. So as I mentioned before, we will also provide a rubric with some guidance and examples of potential applicant responses so that the evaluator has more clarity on what elements to focus on. So some examples of the questions to be removed were really due to the analysis that we described previously, as well as the review of the questions for clarity. We determined that some of the questions may not have added value or may have been confusing considering other questions. Others were those that are already standardized in the application and that MAG would assess before even the committee evaluation begins. One question of note is regarding the systemic project types. Here, this second question here. Systemic safety improvements are important and have been proven to have significant potential to improve safety across the system. So we want to really address this. We're not taking it completely out, but we want to have further discussions on how to address these systemic projects as valuable project types. We'll be discussing that with the Rsp Working Group in the next couple of months and coming back with those recommendations in May, as I mentioned before. So before I go to the next slide, I'd like to pause for questions or input that anyone might have on these recommendations to remove before we move forward. If not, we will move forward to some additional examples. So examples of the quantitative questions that we are recommending are those where the data can be found in the application, and that can be directly coded into the prioritization tool and included eventually in the overall score. So these are the questions that related to network screening, identification through a MAG or local study, alignment with MAG or the Arizona STSP, as well as the 5 equity elements questions. Most of these, again, are already standardized and in the application and through the prioritization tool can be streamlined and taken out of the evaluator's consideration. So with that, any questions regarding these recommendations or examples of the quantitative? Okay, moving forward. So this category of qualitative questions is where we did most of the work the past 2 or 3 months. These are the project value questions and how they address the system performance as it relates to safety to all users of the system. So I've paraphrased some of the questions that you may recognize from the 2021 programming cycle, just simply to get them to fit into the table. So the questions on the far right are the recommended phrasing for these questions. The next 2 slides will provide a little bit more detail. We'll get into those and go through them a little bit more deliberately. So in addition, these questions will give the applicant some guidance of what we're looking for as it relates to value in safety improvement projects that meet the program goals and objectives. All right, moving forward. So here we have the proposed qualitative questions, the scoring rubric. As you can see in the second column with suggested point scale, as well as an example applicant input to be evaluated. On the far right there, the notes column is how this meets the RSP program's goals and objectives. So basically, what are we trying to get from the applicant as it relates to project value? So on this first example question, when we talk about safe system elements and principles, we're really talking about how the proposed, at least in this case, we're talking about how the proposed countermeasure will improve the existing roadway conditions, and that the applicant has provided the rationale for selecting this improvement that can be backed up by analysis and data. In this case, the improvement was recommended through a local analysis, which is always encouraged, the road safety assessment recommendations, and knowledge of the system users as well and their needs for safety in a given area. So you can see that's clearly expressed in the example given here. The guidance will also provide some further detail on what would be considered minimal versus exceptional. So, or no improvement versus, exceptional. So is there any feedback related to this specific qualitative question from committee members? All right, with that, we'll move on to the second question, which relates to the value of the project to the surrounding community. So these are things that are not easily captured with the data sets or something that might be in the application. These are the things that really make a project stand out. So here we want to have a clear indication that the project creates some kind of connection between amenities, addresses a new development and the like from the standpoint of all users of the system. So here you can see the applicant has considered the needs of the community that can't be really quantified in the application. Any input or discussion on this specific question? Okay. So the purpose of the next question is to identify principles and elements of SAFE system as indicated in the project value description in the application. So some of the principles are provided here in the notes on the right-hand side. And we can expand these in the guidance portion of the evaluation form to make it more clear. So the example input clearly links the countermeasure description to SAFE system. So these are elements such as safe roads and safe users, as well as principles of separating users moving at different speeds, as well as separation of time to move through a certain point in the system. These are all SAFE system principles. In addition, I see elements here of the redundancy in the system. So these are things that we would be looking for from the applicant as an evaluator. I think also, the example input also goes beyond consideration of the vehicle and the driver to consider all users of the system. So there's evidence of that here as well. Any questions or input on this qualitative question? Okay. So this fourth question seeks to identify a clear connection between project elements and disadvantaged or underserved populations. So here you can see that the applicant has drawn a real clear connection from the 5 equity elements that they indicated in their application and considered how the project would impact those populations. So although we've worked over the last several weeks on these qualitative questions, it's really important to us that you as evaluators have a good understanding and feel that the guidance would assist and actually result in a more value added to the overall project score. So with that, any input on this specific question? Okay, so this 5th and final qualitative question is intended for the evaluator to apply their personal experience in project delivery to assess the likelihood of the project will be completed in 24 months. So this is actually a requirement to meet the objectives established in the RSP policies and objectives. So you as evaluators may also need to review the cost estimate as well, the project description, the cost estimate, and the schedule in order to assess this element. The example provided here, you can see, would clearly bring into question the project completion in 24 months. Alternately, when review these applications, when they come in, I've seen applications where they've demonstrated that the design is actually already complete. They indicate public support and that there's none or very minimal utility work that's required. So as you can see, this is, obviously a more binary response that would either be no for 0 points or yes for the full 4 points. And this is something that MAG staff really needs from you as evaluators, because you're so much closer to these aspects of procurement of equipment as well as project delivery. So any input or feedback with this 5th and final question? Or any other elements? The rubric, and again, as I mentioned before, there's going to be a bit more guidance as to, what's minimal and what's exceptional.
Hey, Margaret, this is Carrie. Just looking back through these questions, there's obviously a lot of subjectivity in them. And I know you're aware of that. I just, especially that, not this one, but the last one about the equity. It's always subjective in my mind. I mean, you got to start somewhere, but I'd just be concerned about that. That's my really my only comment here.
All right, thank you, Carrie. And just as a reminder, you are part of that working group. So
yeah, I don't trust myself. Yeah. So.
So I think, and again, I guess I'll go back to the very beginning of the presentation, in that when we looked at these questions, what we wanted to do is provide a clear distinction between the quantitative and the qualitative, or the more subjective questions, Carrie. We're not throwing out the quantitative. That will be going into the prioritization tool to be considered with everything else. So it was somewhat done intentionally, but I understand what your concern is, but we definitely are going to be including these in with the quantitative questions.
Thanks.
Sure. So I'm looking at my attendance list, and I know we heard from quite a few of you on the evaluation. So I guess I would just ask if this kind of addresses some of the either concerns or some of the challenges that you had in evaluating these applications. And I'd be happy to go back to any other slide to get any further feedback.
Hey, Margaret, Shane. I'm not sure if I heard correctly at the start, or maybe I missed it, but this has gone through the work group already, or is this what Meg is recommended for changes that are going to be going through the work group again?
No, the working group has not met yet. We really wanted to do a deep dive. First of all, we wanted to get the feedback immediately after, just because it was, fresh in evaluators' minds, and immediately after that November meeting. And then we wanted to take a deep dive into the questions and then come to the committee with those recommendations, get more input from you all as evaluators before we move to those discussions with the working group.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, I think what I'm seeing for just refining the questions and what you just presented makes sense. I could just go back to how I felt when I went through the evaluation last time. I felt the evaluators points just were not correctly weighted against the quantitative. So I guess I don't know how to communicate that without really seeing, I guess, the total, I guess, potential rating for the evaluators, total points and how that would be weighed against the cost benefit and crash ratios. I just know we're asking a lot sometimes on our committee. I put in quite a bit of time, and I just felt like when we then went through and saw the results that a lot of the time that I had put in seemed like it really didn't matter much when the cost benefit and crash ratios pretty much drove it or were weighted so heavily. So I think, by looking at the questions is the right direction. I just can't say how much more maybe needed to, I guess, help me get over that feeling I had. And maybe, that might have been a feeling of some of the other evaluators at that time too, that I had felt that they felt as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, again, one of the reasons why we wanted to focus just on the qualitative in this presentation today and get feedback specifically on that. We did, hear the same comment regarding, I spent so much time on this, but then the evaluation score didn't really account for a whole lot. So that part of the discussion is something that we're going to be discussing internally as well as with the working group. And so those further recommendations will come back to the safety committee in May.
Yeah, I like that idea, Margaret, just because I think the working group maybe would be able to put their head around more of this and maybe understand more what I'm talking about, maybe have a little bit more clarity, I guess, maybe at that time to maybe get more feedback from this main group.
Right. Yeah, I think that the working group I anticipate meeting a couple of times before we come back to the safety committee with recommendations in May. Items such as, how to address systemic projects is going to be one part of that discussion. But the other portions as it relates to the overall score and things like that, we'll also need to review those and look at providing some enhancements to that as well to address that. I think your comment is pretty universal in what we heard from evaluators. And frankly, from what we observed. So I think everybody is on the same page with that thought process, Shane.
Yeah, and sometimes, this is real hard. I know we've struggled with this over the years for a lot of these funds, Margaret. So I know it's not easy, but yeah, definitely appreciate us continuing to take a look at it and trying to get closer to something that will work. So appreciate it.
Thank you, Shane.
I do see Maria's hand up, by the way, Margaret.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Maria.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, committee. Yes, one of the things I was going to say is that I have evaluated and I have also written applications, and we need to make sure that people know what they need to write and explain. And if you define that people should, or you have a prescriptive list or a checklist, saying you have to define purpose, need, the population that is going to affect, how is it going to affect it, what corrective measures you're going to provide. And that is what you're looking at in the application when you're evaluating the equity impacts. It will help maybe link how you write to how you evaluate. And I think that is important to always think of the one who's writing when you're evaluating, to make sure that it's not that they don't want to provide that, it's that they don't know where to write it and where it's expected. So having a checklist for both who is writing the application and who's evaluating it is very, very important.
Thank you, Maria. I paused because I was taking notes. Thank you very much. All right, any additional questions? I think I did have one more slide here of next steps. So again, after today's meeting and the input that we received, we're going to, again, refine the evaluation question based on your feedback. Mentioned continuing to develop that prioritization tool. I've already mentioned the Rsp Working Group meeting in April and May. We'll also, as I mentioned to Shane, further refine and enhance the scoring as well as the evaluation based on those working group discussions. And then again, coming back to the safety committee in May, policy committees in June. Policy committees don't meet in July, so we need to get that done ahead of time before the July or August call for projects.
Right. Thank you, Margaret. I think, is there any other questions, or do we see any other hands out there? All right. Thank you, Margaret. I know that's a tough item and look forward to see it continued and see more come May. All right. Looks like we're moving on to agenda item 8, and that's report by committee members. So at this time, I'd like to invite any members of the committee to report on any ongoing safety related project activities in their jurisdiction. Margaret, if you want to use the roll sheet just to go through everybody here.
Sure, Mr. Chair. When I call your name, please unmute and let me know if you have an item that you would like to report to the committee. Carrie Wilcoxon.
Hi, Margaret, Mr. Chair. The only other additional item I'd like to report is many of you know we've been working on a injury prevention summit for tribes for the last probably 2 years, with the intent that we would have a in-person summit for tribal safety members sometime in the near future. We now have selected a date for that meeting. It will be held at the, I believe, the Auction, or we're looking at the Auction Casino here in Maricopa, or in the Ag region, and it will be in the first part of November of this year. So I'll give more details as we get closer, but I just wanted to let you know we are working on that. And we're excited about finally being able to meet in person. We are also partnering with the Department of Public Health. Thank you.
Thanks, Carrie. Shane, any report from Apache Junction?
None today for me, thank you.
Okay. Ward Stanford, report from Avondale.
Yes, hi. Yeah, we're in the middle of planning for a Hawk beacon to be placed on Avondale, just south of MC 85. Got a good bit of congestion there and a good bit of activity with school children crossing that roadway, and really in an unprotected manner. We've also recently installed a rapid flash beacon on El Mirage. And that again also was just a little bit south of MC 85 for neighborhood crossing to get kids to school. So that's 2 items we've had come up recently.
Thanks, Ford. John Willett, any report from Buckeye? I think he wasn't able to join us. Okay. Raymond, do we have a report from Chandler?
Nothing from Chandler this time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nick Russo, report from El Mirage?
Nothing to report at this time, Margaret. Thank you.
Okay. Ron Rittman, do you have a report from Florence?
No, nothing from Florence. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Aaron Pinkerton, do you have a report for Gilbert?
As for Gilbert this month. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Tony, do you have
yeah.
a report?
Yes, just one quick note. We completed 2 RRFB installations in downtown Glendale, one right by City Hall and one at 53rd Avenue. So those are 2 that we had planned for the year, and we got them all done this month. So that's it for me.
Great, thanks, Tony. Matthew Rigg, do you have a report for Goodyear?
Nothing from Goodyear at this time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's see. Carrie Osborne, do we have a report for the city of Maricopa?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Maza Maradovic, report for Maricopa County?
Yes, Margaret, thank you. So Maricopa County currently is working on developing crash rates per classification, road classification within Maricopa County system. We are working, and we've just wrapped up the rates based on overall rates and also severe crash rates currently for the principal arterials. And then we're going to move forward with the other categories, based on the last 5 years, that crash data. We will try to utilize the data to try to submit HSIP funding for some locations, and that's what we intend to do. So that's all I have today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mazen. All right, Maria, do you have a report for Mesa?
Yes, I do. Thank you. So our HSIP project, Southern and Country Club Safety and Intersection Improvements, is scheduled to be completed sometime in August of this year. We were able to leverage the money we were getting as reimbursement in the ALCP, as well as doing this HSIP. So combining, making sure that the pavement supported the safety countermeasures was very important. And we were able to do not only roadway improvements, but also safety improvements. And we look forward to opening this project because it was one of Mesa's highest and most dangerous intersections due to crashes. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. I'll look forward to seeing that one completed. Okay, Chris Lemke, do you have a report from the city of Peoria? All right, we'll come back to Chris if need be. Carl Langford, do you have a report from the city of Phoenix?
Thank you, Margaret, Chair, members of the committee. For Phoenix, we'd like to announce that we will actually this Thursday be turning on our 75th hawk in the city. So quite an accomplishment, as about 5 years ago, we maybe had about 20. So anyways, so that's a report for City of Phoenix.
Great, thanks, Carl. Tara, do we have a report for Pinell County?
Nothing to report today, but thank you.
All right, thank you. Jen Martin, is there a report for Queen Creek?
Have no updates at this time. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Kiran, do you have a report for Scottsdale?
Thank you, Margaret. We have 2 hawks that are currently in construction. The Thomas and 86th Street hawk will be turned on sometime in first or second week of April. And the other one is funded with MAG, Rsp Road Safety Fund, Road Safety Program funds. That's at Camelback and Saddleback. We'll be kicking off the construction on that project early April. That's probably first week of April, and we should be ready to turn that on by end of May. That's all I have. Thank you.
Good to hear, Kiran. Dana Asiene, do you have a report for Surprise?
Nothing from Surprise today, thanks.
Thank you. Kathy Hollow, you have a report for Tempe?
Sure. Yeah, as part of our Vision Zero program, we had identified safety corridors as an action item in the plan, and we have identified 3 safety corridors. We did this in conjunction with our police department, since it goes hand in hand with enforcement in order to make it effective. And we'll be putting signs out in the next week or so that identifies them, and then there'll be increased enforcement in the same locations. So.
Great, thanks, Kathy. I noted that Shane had mentioned something similar last meeting for Apache Junction. Might be a good idea at some point after. Are you planning on doing some evaluation?
Yeah, I guess we haven't really figured out exactly what it will be. So, because some of it was for, like pedestrian, like poor decisions by pedestrians, and of course nobody tallies those numbers ahead of time. We would know how many pedestrians police spoke to after we put up the signs and when they're doing the increased enforcement. So we're not sure exactly how we're gonna evaluate this whole program. So.
Okay, yeah, to be continued. So.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Frank Sotil, do you have a report for Valley Metro?
Nothing new to report today, Margaret. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Frank. Jeff King, do you have some items for FHWA?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Margaret, Mr. Chair. Last week, many of you probably saw FHWA release the Moving to Complete Streets Design Model report to Congress. For those of you that got that and then reshared it, I thank you for that. In short, the rise in fatalities involving vulnerable road users, Congress, as a result of that, Congress is encouraging the adoption of the complete street design model, where we design roads and streets to enable safe use and access by all users and all abilities and ages. FHWA clearly agrees with Congress, and that's reflected in the strategies outlined in the National Road Safety Strategy that was released by the department earlier this year. And you can see elements of that encouragement in the changes made to Section 23 USC 148, the HSIP section, as well as the new HSIP guidance, in particular, the vulnerable road user rule, which requires states where their fatalities are greater than 15% involving vulnerable road users, they must obligate 15% of their HSIP funds the following year. Additionally, in that bipartisan infrastructure bill, many of you probably saw, they created a new $6 billion Safe Streets for All competitive grant program for local governments. More details on that and other items will be announced in the coming weeks and months. Now, not by accident, but my second item is also related to that. Tomorrow, we are hosting an Arizona Virtual Complete Streets Primer Workshop. We have, as of this morning, 74 registered, and I know many of you have already registered for that, and I am sure you all completed your pre-workshop homework assignment. But if you happen to have missed that invitation and you would like to join, there's still time. It's tomorrow from 9 a.m. to 11. If you want to join, just shoot me an email and I'll immediately send you the link to the registration and the homework assignment. Don't worry, the homework assignment actually is very easy. 15, 20 minutes tops. It involves watching a video, making a few comments, and then it also shares 7 or 8 other videos that are very interesting, related to the topic of complete streets and somewhat entertaining. That's all I have, Margaret. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jeff. Couple things, kind of a MAG report, I guess. And I meant to do this after Larry finished with his presentation, but just to remind you all that MAG offers to provide local agencies with a list of intersections for at least a starting point for consideration for further analysis or potential HSIP projects. Basically, we use the network screening that's in our crash database, utilizing that, as well as implementing a user severity index. And what that does is basically isolates those intersections that have the fatal and serious injury crashes. So it isolates for you those intersections that might be potential candidates for HSIP. So just reminding you that we do offer that to you. In addition, I know there was a request to put something in the chat earlier. I had forgotten that we have the chat function turned off on this due to every conversation during these meetings is open to public meeting. So we have for several months now, and I totally forgot about this, for several months have turned off the chat function at these meetings, but I will be sending out that link to you all after the meeting. So you'll have that. And that's all I had, Mr. Chair.
All right, thanks everyone. Thank you for those reports, no matter how large or even how small. Definitely, even if small, they are definitely worthwhile just to hear what's happening out there and to foster ideas with others. So thank you for that. We'll move on to item 9, which is future agenda items. So at this time, if committee members have any items or issues that they have of interest that we should be considered for next future meeting, please state so now. If not, please feel free to email Margaret or myself with those agenda items. So please let us know right now here if you have any items. All right, I don't hear any, so we'll move on to item 9, or yeah, was it 9 or 10?
It's 10.
Okay. Next meeting date in place. Next meeting of the Traffic Safety Committee will be held 10 a.m. on Tuesday, May 24th, 2022. And I think this might be where we might experience that change to a hybrid virtual meeting.
Yes.
Unless otherwise noted. Thank you. All right. And I guess we'll go ahead and adjourn at this time. Again, thanks for everybody for attending and bearing with us through these important items that we discussed at this meeting. So wish everybody have a good day, and I'll go ahead and adjourn. And Apache Junction time, it's 11:45. Thank you.
Thank you.